Welcome back. We just completed the trip to Las Vegas and we now have 1,000 miles on the clock. I want to do an oil change, which is fairly normal, but I want to emphasize I do three things slightly different. Number one, once I drain all the oil, I flush it with a fresh liter of oil and I let that drain out, hoping it pushes any of the old oil or any chunks out. Number two, I not only lubricate the O-ring in the oil filter, I lubricate the spindle also. And the third thing I do is I white paper it. After I do an oil change and have your car back on the ground and everything ready to go, you drive it and then you park it overnight after it's had a heat cycle and watch for any drips. The white paper test will tell you how well you've done in the end. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Club Dino. Had a real great time in Las Vegas at the Concours and drove over 900 miles. As you can see, we've now put 1,000 miles on the car since I've had it, and the oil has never been changed under me, so it's time to do it. Let's get the car jacked up and show you exactly what it takes and when to do it. Opening the engine, we want to determine how often to change the oil. At the price of the cars these days to buy a Dino, an oil change at $100 to $150 for oil, a good filter, and a crush washer is just a real trivial amount of money. So bottom line, if it's cost, you can change it as often as you want. The guys come over for beers on a Friday, you got nothing left to do, change oil in the Dino. Now, one critical deciding factor should be if your car is running slightly rich. What I like to do is smell the dipstick. Pull it out with two hands when you're not filming and put your nose on it for unburned hydrocarbons. If your car is running rich, it could be washing down the cylinders and compromising the lubrication. In that case, I would accelerate oil and filter changes to 1,500 or, as I'm doing here, 1,000 miles. All right, so that's the only real concern for it. Cost isn't a concern, but you do want to make sure that you are running in tune and not too rich. If you decide to run rich, perfect, change your oil sooner. Let's get to it and change the oil. Let's move over to the passenger side rear wheel where all of the maintenance seems to be originating, and an oil change will need 7 liters of oil, a 12 millimeter sump plug with crush washer, and an oil filter. I've chosen a K&N HP 3001 for the anti-drain back valve. Now, what I found when I did a valve adjust a year ago is that the galleys contain a lot of oil. That is, I bumped the engine over 3 weeks after the car had last started, and there was still plenty of oil in the galleys. An anti-drain back valve is great, but the Dino engine that's been run recently will have enough oil in the galleys to start the lubrication on the tappets before it even gets past the oil filter. So it's a pretty good engine design. A couple things I am going to do. I am putting a new sump plug in. That takes a 12 millimeter Allen head and funnel. So let's get our rear wheel off, change the oil filter, and start the draining into our recyclable container. And we will respectfully recycle our oil. One added thing that other people do not do, I am using 7 liters of oil for the capacity and an EOS assembly lubricant. That's basically your ZDDP with extra manganese and phosphorus to protect the tappets. What I will do, since I'm not sure what oil the prior owner had, is I have an extra liter of oil. As I'm draining the old oil out, when it appears to come to a trickle, I will put a brand new liter of HR1 to the engine and let it drain out as a flush to get all the old oil out. All right, moving underneath the car. Take your 12 millimeter Allen and find the sump plug, which will be in the front. Remember, these are labeled Cambio oil. That's the gear change oil. and the engine oil is up front. That is somewhat counterintuitive to anybody, but in this case, you can see that I've already changed the sump plugs in the transaxle. They're bright and shiny, and the dull one will be in the engine, but your car may not have that. I would recommend changing all the sump plugs, and I'm putting a new one in here too. They are not that expensive, and it keeps things releasing nicely. I just broke the seal on this transaxle plug. Difficult to do when I'm filming, sorry, but there was a really nice crisp, and it's about 20 foot-pounds, which to me is absolutely correct and perfect. I really like that. Okay, it's loose. It is loosened now, and the fact that it did have about a 20 foot-pound feel to it is very reassuring from the people before. Do not over tighten these by any means. So, as we let the oil drain, I'm going to go up top and release the fill plug in the top. All right, let's start our flush and let the new oil drain and push anything out of the sump for our final drain. Then we'll fresh liter of brand new oil and let it roll down through there and flush out all the old. Then we'll go down, seal up the sump with a brand new sump plug and fresh gasket, and then focus on the filter. I like to drain the sump and seal the plug back up before moving to the oil filter because it can be rather messy to remove the oil filter, and I like to have the recycling container right nearby. Install the new sump plug and copper crush washer, then torque to 20 foot-pounds. Use your favorite strap wrench or oil filter remover tool and remove the filter. I place plenty of towels underneath so when the oil in here removes, it drops down through the paper towels, cleans up there, or into the catch papers up to shield the belts and pulleys. I've arranged the catch can underneath, and now let's see about the flood. Let's turn this. As we notice, the oil filter is pointed down, which means oil will flow out. As we see, it's starting to come out. Now, the Eufy does not have an anti-drain pack valve. I wonder if we lucked out today, and by letting it sit at an extra hour to drain, have we... Oh my goodness. Maybe we won't be making a mess. Yeah, we're making a mess. A little mess. A smaller mess. And we can now take a look at that. Bad lighting, I know. There. Got a little bit of oil there. I will not fill the oil filter before mounting it. That's too much. But let's wipe off that surface and install our K&N HP 3001. Here's our K&N HP 3001. I'm going to do two things. Everybody knows about lubricating the O-ring. I'm also going to lubricate the inside threads here too. So, oops. So let's wipe that off. Tin it with a little oil. And all right, the K&N filter is pre-lubed on the O-ring as well as the threads, the inner threads. That's one thing I do a little differently. It allows it to slip on just a little easier. Then again, you could say there's plenty of oil there. So I'll try and mount this. Oh, can I do this on camera? One thing you do is you set it on the stem and roll it backwards. Said that you could do as many oil changes as you like and not cause any damage. That meant the threads weren't damaged when you put either the plug in or the oil filter. I'm going to show you now the technique never to bung up the oil filter. You rotate it backwards and listen for a click as you push down with the light firm. Should be hearing it. There we go. And now we can start rotating it, tightening. See, we never cross thread it that way. We avoid it. And this is easily going on by hand. And you want this hand tight. For me, that's too much oil right over the exhaust. So I am pulling out the brake cleaner, and let's hit this and let it roll into our recycle bin. Ladies and gentlemen, the new filter's in. The inner splash panel is in, but I have some difficult holes here that have been stripped out, probably by 6mm screws that somebody tried to install. So I'm going to have a future video, stay tuned, on how to repair these so they're firm and tight. I'll give you the secrets of it and make sure that your panels don't fall off on the road. Let's install the rear wheel, bring the car to level, and start filling with oil. Removing the filler cap on the further end one and inserting a funnel, we're ready to fill up. Notice there is a second oil filler cap here. It's difficult, and there's actually a return line blocking usages. So why would you have a second filler port here? The reason is for the emissions line and the breather. It's easy to bring that hose up and just add another similar filler cap and utilize the hose and comply with emissions for America. Start filling with oil. The 7 liters is a very convenient number, as it usually provides a fill, but of course, make sure you check your situation with the dipstick. And then when you tighten up the fill cap to hand tight, you're ready to go. Give it a heat cycle and check it again and add if necessary. And remember, the new oil filter will take about a liter. So that's what I do. It's 3 things differently to change the oil in a Dino. Number 1, I flush with a new fresh liter of oil and literally waste it. Number 2, I lubricate not only the O-ring and seal gasket of the oil filter, but also the spindles to help it rise more. And then today, I've got a white paper test going on, and I'll check for any drips afterwards and tend to any. Thank you for coming along today as we change the oil. The trip to Las Vegas provided us with a lot of information about the car. We have 3 tasks that I can see that came out from this drive that we figured out. Number 1, we have a little loose here that really sends a high amperage surge through the system. This is an olive piece inside pressing on a ball for a contact. You can see that's flaky. Second thing was when I was raising the passenger's window, the stop had a nasty ratcheting noise we'll have to look into. And thirdly, I had 3 situations where I downshifted into third over the last 1,000 miles and it ground the gears. That is very odd with third gear. There are records from 2,000 miles ago that say the clutch has an issue, and we will be looking into replacing the clutch. They're actually quite affordable on a Dino. Parts on Dinos aren't that bad. So look forward to future videos. We've got a lot more maintenance coming up.